Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we're going to do something truly fascinating. We're going to literally deconstruct the exact mechanics of suspense. We'll be looking at a deeply chilling narrative that actually appears in our source material under two distinct titles. And we're going to examine exactly how the author uses sound, pacing, and psychological triggers to manufacture pure terror. We are going to break down Emily's Night step by step to show you the true anatomy of a scare. Have you ever walked into an empty room, only to feel like you weren't exactly alone? You know that feeling, right? That sudden drop in temperature, the heavy air, the instinctual urge to just look over your shoulder? Well, this is the exact psychological trigger our source text exploits right out of the gate. The author doesn't just start with a monster, they start with a feeling you have highly likely experienced yourself at some point. By anchoring the horror in a universal human anxiety, that incredibly creepy feeling of an occupied empty space, the narrative immediately bypasses our logical defenses and taps straight into our primal fears. And that brings us to our protagonist, Emily. The story kicks off with this line. Emily had always loved old houses, but this one felt different. Notice how efficiently those few words set the psychological stage for us. In just a breath, the author establishes the classic creepy old house trope, but completely subverts Emily's comfort with it. I mean, she's someone who normally loves this environment, so if she feels that it's different, we as the audience instantly know something is terribly wrong. The second she steps inside, the text notes the air growing colder and floorboards creaking, even though she is entirely alone. The stage is set. So our source material actually goes by two distinct titles, and both of them brilliantly foreshadow the unrelentless, physical threat Emily's about to face. The first, The Echoes of Everlasting Tenancy, is, well, it's almost poetic. It implies a haunting that is historical, cyclical, and inescapable. It's like someone or something holds a lease that literally never expires. But conversely, you have the scratching in the walls. Now that one is immediate, visceral, and incredibly tactile. It forces you to listen. Together, they tell us exactly what's happening. She is dealing with a tenant that has always been there, and they are making themselves known right behind the plaster. All right, let's move into our first major phase of the story. Section 1. The unsettling arrival, establishing the atmosphere. The author uses this absolutely deliberate four-step auditory escalation to slowly drag Emily and us right along with her from normalcy into pure panic. Sound is absolutely the primary vehicle for terror here. Step 1 starts with just environmental sounds, the soft howling of the wind, the distant creaking of a door, stuff that is easily dismissed. But step 2 escalates to unintelligible sounds, a soft, almost inaudible whisper as Emily unpacks her bag. Then, step 3 crosses a terrifying boundary with targeted sounds. The whisper actually grows clearer, repeating, "Emily, Emily," over and over. It's no longer just background noise. It knows she's there. And finally, step 4 shifts to physical sounds, slow scratching, like nails on wood. The threat has officially moved from the ethereal to the physical world. And this brilliantly illustrates the internal conflict happening within our protagonist. On one hand, we see Emily's desperate flight or fight response. Her brain is working overtime to protect her by rationalizing the sounds as just the wind, because, let's be honest, admitting otherwise is a bit too much for a random Tuesday night. She tells herself she's just imagining things, completely ignoring the strange shadows dancing along the walls. But on the other hand, we have this horrifying reality that shatters all those rationalizations. You can't rationalize the physical sound of scratching in the walls, and you certainly can't rationalize locked doors when you try to escape. The real tension comes from that friction between what Emily wants to believe and what is undeniably happening to her. Which brings us right into the second phase of our deconstruction, Section 2, the midnight climax, confronting the physical evidence. The pacing here is absolutely crucial. The author doesn't just rush the scare. Emily's arrival in the evening is followed by the onset of those whispers. But look at the middle of this progression. Hours passed. Her sleep is completely shattered by the sound of scratching. The author traps Emily in this state of prolonged, agonizing anticipation for hours. It literally isn't until midnight that she can't take it anymore, grabs her flashlight, and follows the sound to the living room wall for the discovery. The pacing is just a slow, agonizing tightening of the screws before the final snap. Okay, so here is the ultimate revelation. Emily follows the scratching sound. Her flashlight flickers, which, is a classic trope of failing technology in the face of the supernatural. And in the dim glow, she finds these exact words violently scratched into the plaster. "I'm still here." It is a brilliant climax. It confirms every single fear she had been desperately trying to suppress. It's physical proof that the everlasting tenant is real, it's aware of her, and it is asserting its dominance over the space. Talk about a deeply invasive violation of her safety. Right after that discovery, total sensory overload. The supernatural reality drops all pretense whatsoever. The quiet, eerie whisper suddenly turns into an echoing scream. Emily panics and runs to the door, only to find it inexplicably locked. Absolute isolation sets in. When she turns back, the text describes the walls themselves seeming to pulse, physically closing in on her. The house is no longer just a setting. It has become an active, breathing predator. And then, just as suddenly as the chaos peaked, accompanied by the soft sound of a beating heart, there is total, deafening silence. Which leads us to the terrifying aftermath. Let's look at the final section. Section 3, the empty morning, the unending cycle. Talk about a jarring tonal shift. We go from this claustrophobic, screaming nightmare straight into the mundane, bright reality of the very next morning. Morning birds are faintly chirping. A real estate agent casually opens the door and calls out, but the facts of the scene are horrifying. No one answers. The house is completely empty. Emily has been entirely erased from existence. But the real gut punch? The faint scratching continues in the walls. The entity remains, just waiting for the next visitor. That stark contrast of normal morning sounds against this incredibly dark reality makes the horror linger way, way beyond the climax. The source material leaves us with this chilling final thesis. Some houses are never truly empty. It's the absolute perfect summation of the everlasting tenancy title we discussed earlier. The horror here isn't some monster you can defeat or a ghost that can be put to rest. It is a permanent fixture of the architecture. It's a cyclical trap that just reset itself, perfectly content to wait in the walls until the next unsuspecting person who just loves old houses decides to spend the night. And that wraps up our explainer. We've seen exactly how the author uses environmental cues, targeted sound escalation, and psychological isolation to craft the perfect scare. But, as we all know, the most effective horror always follows you home. So, if we accept the text's premise that some spaces are permanently occupied by unseen things, it leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling thought to consider. If some houses are never truly empty, who is sharing yours with you right now? Keep an ear out for those creaking floorboards, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep learning.